All right, welcome to the last of this school year's virtual Excel Academy. This is part 3 of our series on college readiness. And I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to our presenter, Leslie Thatcher.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. The other Leslie. We've got two of us today. So good day, Leslie Thatcher. And I am happy to be here for session 3 for our college prep webinar series. I am glad you're all in here. A couple of housekeeping notes. We have a lot of turf to cover today, so I'm going to try and keep it fast-paced, but not too fast. I'm also noting that occasionally my internet glitches and I might freeze and you might miss something. Just toss a note in the chat and either our webinar moderator, Leslie, will help let me know, or I'll see it in the chat and I will try and repeat whatever I said. So I apologize for that in advance. It's just been a little wonky lately. A couple of other things, if you have comments or questions you want to ask, I love that, as those of you who've joined us before know. So please either raise your hand and Leslie, moderator, will help us identify you at an appropriate pause point, or toss your question in the chat. And as you may know, I tend to follow the chat as much as I can and can pause and answer those questions as I have appropriate moments. We always want to keep this a safe, welcoming place for everyone. So kindness rules in this environment. Think of those who are joining us on the call. Trying to think of other housekeeping things. Those are the really big ones. I always encourage you, if you have a note-taking device, to take notes. We will get, after this session is over, a resource list out to you all of the many resources I've referred to over these 3 lessons, and hopefully those will serve as useful resources for you as well moving forward. So without further ado, as you guys know, I tend to review what our learning objectives are and remind us about a few things to keep in mind about ourselves. So the learning objectives for our college prep webinar series were to learn about today's college environment, which we've learned is quite diverse. We've talked about understanding more about what college demands are and how you might match up and what you can do to get better prepared if there's some gaps. We'll talk about that for sure today. To understand more about the college search, college match, the application process and timelines. I could talk for 3 whole sessions just on that. So we've just scratched the surface. And we've explored a little bit about what college is in previous sessions. So if you haven't joined previous sessions, I encourage you to go back and look at those, because they really do unpack with a little more depth. What is college? Why would you want to go? Why would you maybe want to pause before you go to college? What are some other options to have a meaningful life with as much independence as you want to have, or desire, or can have, or need? So anyhow, some of those prior sessions unpack some of that. Today's focus, I'm going to go over in just a moment. First, I want you to remember it's okay not to have all the answers right now. Of the students on this call, you're in high school or maybe a little earlier, and you haven't seen all the world yet, and you're just beginning to learn how it all works with who you are. So be patient with yourself. It's okay to not know what you want to be or do with your life. That's normal and appropriate. We'll unpack a little bit of that today. Some things to think about in this moment, and as you think about college or work, consider, where am I now? You know, I'm in 11th grade, I'm in 9th grade. Am I working to my highest capacity? Am I struggling with school? Am I not enjoying this much? Do I feel heard and understood? Those are all important questions to understand and work to arrange so that it kind of meets what you're looking for. Where do I want to be? I want to be able to travel the world. I want to be able to live in my own apartment. I want to be able to be outside as much as possible. I want to be the best goalball player in the world. Whatever it is, What do you want to be? What are some of those things that speak to you? Then you got to ask, how am I going to get there? Do I need to ramp up my O&M skills? Maybe so. Do I need to learn how to make plane reservations? Probably. Do I need to earn enough money to travel to gold ball tournaments? Yep. So those are some of the steps that you can begin to think about and then help you chart your course to get there. My final statement on this particular slide is, what resources will I need, both material like money or a bed to sleep in, and what skills do you need in your own toolbox? Your ability to navigate websites, your ability to book plane reservations, and so on. So think through some of those things, because that will be your life eventually once you get out of high school and college, and you're going to need to be able to have those resources available and at your fingertips to walk on your journey. So without further ado, we're going to do a very quick review of lesson 2. I've alluded to some of that. We explored what independence is, the value of finding a college match to what your needs are, both right out of high school or a couple of years out of high school. We reminded you all that everybody's path is different, that one person's path should not be compared or considered the only way to do things. Your path is your path. We also talked about the selectivity issue in college admissions, that there are some big name colleges. I used Harvard as the biggest of big names that admit less than 25% of their applicants. Those are unpredictable colleges, and that we can never count on getting into them, no matter how super awesome you are. But there's tons of amazing colleges, both near your home and farther away, that may be appropriate matches and are looking for wonderful students like you. So today we're going to talk about how to select a major, exploring the admissions process a little bit further as it relates to majors. There's a couple of big asterisks you need to know about that. We're going to explore how to determine if you're ready for college. That was a big thing that Robin and I talked about as we sort of brainstormed that, and it's a lot of the work I do in my day job. For those of you who did the extension activity after session 2, we asked a bunch of questions about that too, and hopefully that might have helped open your mind and to start thinking about some of that. We are going to introduce the basics about the difference between high school and college, also known as the difference between IDEA and ADA. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to introduce it to you, and we'll send you lots of resources to learn more. We'll talk a little bit about meeting with the DSO and briefly talk about how, do you disclose or not disclose in your application process, and so on. So there's chunky menu. I'm going to do my darndest to get through this as we go along. So you guys ready? My first slide is all about standardized tests, the SAT and the ACT. And I'm going to briefly talk about this again. This could be a 3-session conversation, but I do want, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. I just came back from a 3-day conference where that was a huge part of the conversation. You may have heard that a lot of colleges are considering making their colleges either test optional, test blind, or require standardized testing, both for admissions or for scholarships or for both. And so I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of shifting going on. Even 5 or 6 years ago, a majority of colleges required standardized tests, the SAT or the ACT. There's pros and cons to either one. They're interchangeable at almost every single college in the country. But if you're, depending on the college that you're looking at, that is something you're going to want to look up on their website. Are you test optional? Which means that you're not required to submit a standardized test score, but they will accept them as part of your admissions file, but it's not required. Test blind means they simply do not ever look at a test score ever, and you do not need to submit them. Places, often community colleges, don't require SAT scores for lots of good reasons. The highly selective schools have a mix of test blind or test optional, and highly selective schools like Massachusetts Institute for Technology, also known as MIT, have in their studies decided that they are going to require it moving forward I wouldn't say post-pandemic, but now that we're in this phase of the pandemic, and they will require it because they are realizing the data they get from that helps them make better admissions decisions and better matches to their very unique curriculum. So there's a wonderful website called fairtest.org. And again, this will be on the list of resources. And they're a organization that tracks all this stuff. And you can just look up test schools that are test optional or require a test. And it's a very efficient way to find out kind of where you are on that. So I'm going to pause on that and just see if there are questions. I see nothing.
Yes,
in
there is a hand raised.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay, Isabel, you can unmute.
You out there, Isabel? Are you out there?
Isabel is pretty good at unmuting, so we'll give her another quick second. I will lower her. Oh,
okay.
If you want to lower her hand, and then we'll see if she has a question later.
Okay. Sounds
Otherwise,
good.
you're good to go, Leslie Thatcher.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So onward to selecting a major. So this is a hot topic, and it's actually a really fun thing to think about. So I've had a little fun preparing my slides for this. A major, just for some definition purposes, is most colleges require both community colleges for an associate's degree and four-year colleges require for a Bachelor of Science or Arts or Fine Arts require that you declare a major. And you've probably heard that expression, declaring a major. Most four-year schools require that you declare one by typically the end of your sophomore year. Many of them also allow you to declare a minor or to double major. Sometimes majors are called concentrations at places like Hampshire College in the Pioneer Valley in Massachusetts. They don't even have majors. You just design your own course of study for the entire 4 years you're there. Some schools offer certificate programs as well, such as a certificate in early childhood or early child care and that type of thing. So some students feel quite a bit of pressure to declare one. And in some cases, state voc rehab organizations require that you identify a major in order to get state funding to enroll in a college. And so there is some appropriate pressure on that. But I want to talk a little bit about the value of thinking through this. So the first slide I have is asking you, because you know I like to ask you questions, right? What are your strengths, your challenges, your weaknesses? And I hate the word weaknesses because to me it's always just an opportunity to strengthen that muscle. But I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm not going to read all the questions on the slide. I'm going to send all of these PowerPoints to Robin and Leslie and Leanne at APH, and they can be available if need be. But some things to think about. Are you social? Do you like engaging with people? Are you super motivated to learn more, super competitive? Do you enjoy learning? Do you like problem solving? Do you like to think outside the box? Do you like to follow routines and rules? Do you like structure? Do you prefer working in quiet environments? Do you prefer lots of activities? On and on and on. Some of these things may inform majors that may be really interesting for you, aligned with your skills and strengths. And I'm going to give you examples of that. But you can imagine, I'm just going to use myself, someone like me hanging out in a biology lab in a college would not be a good match for many reasons. I like to be outside. I like engaging with lots of people. And although I like problem solving, which you do in a biology lab, I'm not super good with all the little details and calculations. So that was not a good match for me as a major. Another thing to think about, are you concerned about making a significant amount of money? Do you want to only work part-time, full-time? What are the specifics of some of those goals? So those may inform a major that you might do. I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm a history major, believe it or not. How did I get to be the job that I have right now as director of college success, a college readiness program? I also majored in education, but my primary focus was history. And I'll tell you the skills I got out of that very traditional liberal arts major. I learned excellent communication skills, both written and oral communication. I had lots of discussions in my classes, and I had to write a lot. My final thesis was something like a 35 or 40 page single-spaced research paper about immigration to Ashland, Oregon, right? So I had to learn a lot. I learned analysis, I learned evaluation, I learned how to research, I learned data management because I analyzed a lot of data I generated. I had curiosity, I learned about attention to detail, recognition of patterns. I got a balance of quiet and collaborative work. And a history major, for example, is excellent preparation for a wide range of careers such as education, law. People often think about that. Also, administrative jobs like the job that Robin has or the job I have is administration. And it's attention to details, it's research, it's managing a lot of things all at once. People who want to be entrepreneurs, it's a wonderful preparation for that. People who want to take a leadership role in their world or community, nonprofit management, historic preservation, fundraising and development, I could go on. So think broadly about what majors might be. I chose that because I love history, and particularly American history, and it worked well for me. So that is one example. I'm going to give you some more examples. Did you know that there is a major about events and hospitality management? That many colleges have a major like this. Sometimes it's in their School of Business. Sometimes it's in their College of Arts and Sciences. It just all depends on how the college is organized. This could be a really attractive major for someone who maybe doesn't want to study what they might think of as super boring history, but really wants to learn about logistics and social needs for wellness and event planning, finance, business development, customer service theory, the history of recreation in the global community, environmental tourism, things like that. You can take a broad range of, it would blow your mind the kinds of cool classes that you could take as a hospitality major. And this has a broad range of job applications as well. You could go into wedding planning, which is a wonderful mix of working with people and attention to detail and very creative work. You could be client support for a business or customer support for a business or a hotel or a resort or a restaurant or anything like that. You could help plan events for a major sports team. Or another large social local museums, a really awesome school for the blind maybe, or a terrific organization like American Clearinghouse for the Blind. So there are many, many applications for the skills you might gain as a hospitality major. So I hope this is opening up your mind. I see there's a question into what that might look like. And I see your question, Jennifer. How do you plan out the courses that you need to take without knowing a course of study? Great question. I'm going to jump into that in just, actually, I'll kind of lay that out now. So in very broad strokes, a major is roughly approximately 1/3 of all the credits you would take in a college. Sometimes it's more, particularly for science majors. Sometimes it might be a little bit less, but typically anticipate, 1/3 of the courses you take apply to your major. About 1/3 of the courses you take in a college, and I'm talking either 2 or 4-year colleges, about 1/3 of your coursework are general education requirements. Those are things that you have to do in order to get a degree from college X, Y, or Z. They're called general education requirements, distribution requirements, core classes. They're called a wide range of things. They're often things where you're demonstrating skills in global awareness, written expression, quantitative reasoning, things that are aligned to the values of that particular college. They're courses that you would take throughout your 4 years there. Sometimes there will language and so on. So, so a third are general education courses, a third are your major, and a third are elective credits that you could get a second major, a minor, just explore all the cool things you want to explore and learn about that are available to learn about in a college environment and so on. But that's roughly how your courses are distributed. To your question, Jennifer, when students enroll in a college, they're, depending on the approach the college takes, they're either assign you an academic advisor, a specific person who's used to working with freshmen who don't maybe know all this stuff. Some places have advising centers. Community colleges often work on that model, where you have a suggested series of courses you might take, and then you show up there and sign up for your courses or ask questions about it. You may have to take placement tests, and they'll help you sort out how that series of courses your first year might go. For students who you might, because you have to declare something, say, I'm going to major in psychology or business. Those are classic standard ones. Many colleges don't require that you enter with a declared major, even though on things like the Common application, they ask for that. But by meeting some of the general education requirements as a freshman, they're often ones where you can take a course in psychology, a course in business, and a course in computer science, and dip your toe in a lot of different waters and see which one you really like. I did that, and I decided I didn't want to major in psychology. It didn't float my boat the way history did. And so that's how I landed in history. I took a bunch of courses, political science courses and so on. And even though I did that just a couple years ago, that same model still applies, where you can test a bunch of courses out before actually having to declare your major. I strongly encourage you to take responsibility, to know the requirements for your college, read the course catalog, be an expert in that, because it is your journey, no one else's responsibility, to know that. And the more you know about it, the more creative and driven you can be in getting everything you can out of that college experience. So Jennifer, I hope that helped a little bit. Let me check your question one more time. Without knowing a course to study. Yeah. So that's where knowing how the college catalog works really helps you. And just dropping into, I'll say one more thing and then I think I hear you, Leslie.
Yeah.
Dropping into, like I assigned in one of the extension activities, going and finding a major you might be interested at a local college or, at Harvard. It doesn't really matter. Go dig into that department. Explore. Often they have 4-year plans. See what kinds of courses you'd have to take freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and so on. See how those build up. See if you get excited by that. Every college is going to approach the same psychology major differently or the same history major differently, but you'll begin to educate yourself about the possibilities out there. You can't know what you haven't encountered yet. So you got to go out and explore and try stuff on for size. That doesn't cost anything. You just got to get online and look up some colleges. So yes, Leslie.
Houston has his hand raised.
Hello, Houston. How you doing?
You should be able to talk. Unmute.
There it goes.
Yep.
There you go.
I wasn't sure if I was mute first, and then I tried to put it into anything, but I was just wondering. So, personally for me, I wouldn't say a major, but what I wanted to do, I've kind of known that since I was 7, almost 7 or 8 even.
Okay.
And I've heard that can change sometimes depending on what you want to do.
Yeah. And it may, so what would you be willing to share what you are thinking you want to do?
I've always thought of maybe going into teaching music or something.
Yeah. Awesome.
But I'm trying to debate, next year, if I take Spanish or not, because my mom was always telling me how I should probably minor in language too.
Yeah, so you should take language in high school. I always strongly recommend, and most
Yeah.
colleges, selective colleges, assume you're going to take at least 2 years of the
Yeah.
same language in high
Yeah,
school.
because after this year, I'll already be done with like my language credits. I just don't know if I would like.
A a selective college is going to want you to be in that as long as humanly possible, as in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
I have a slide talking about high school curriculum in a couple slides. But teaching music, this is a scenario. You would major in music,
Yeah.
A college. You would have to get a master's in order to teach music in a public school setting. And so you could take music and major in music, and you typically focus in performance or vocal music or instrumental music. And in some cases, there are like 5-year programs where you can get both your bachelor's and your master's, and so on. So there's lots of different ways to approach that. So start looking at colleges that align with some of your criteria that you've explored, and see if they how they do that. Sometimes calling their school of education or department of education, just talk to someone. They love helping. Bigger schools often have someone who do just that all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know there's one more question here. Okay, Leanne, this may be a silly question, but does anyone know any university where someone with a visual impairment took language courses online, and if there was an effort to make the course accessible? Wowza, Leanne. I think there are folks who take world languages, but you would need to explore each individual university. I don't know about the online experience. You would need to pursue that via each university's DSO to explore the accessibility of that particular programming at the college. Does that make sense? But that's a research school by school. If you love world languages, though, that sounds like a wonderful thing. All right, moving on. So to help you all understand that there are a wide range of majors out there that maybe you hadn't considered, I went and did a little research, and I will include this list in our resources as well. This is from Indeed.com, which is a huge job search site, which if you have time to burn is super fun to explore because you can learn about jobs you never knew existed. But there are majors out there in things like mortuary science, herbal sciences that could lead to a job as a horticulturalist, a health and wellness advisor, and so on. There is a major called costume technology, where you could turn into a costume designer, a wardrobe assistant, or costume shop manager. There's a major in pop music, where you could be a songwriter, music producer, studio manager, and fermentation sciences, where you could turn into a brewmaster or a brewery logistics manager, which is sort of like a parallel to a winemaker, I think would be a good way to describe that. So, you know, there's jobs out there and majors out there that you may not have known about. So you keep hearing me saying, go explore, and I mean it, because who knows, maybe leisure studies is the job for you. So with that, fun thing, ooh, there's more questions in Indeed. Oh yeah, I hear about that. Well, Houston, there, the link I'm going to send you is a list of many of those unique majors and jobs that are related to them. And it was super fun to look at. So I will definitely have that there. Okay, so I'm going to pivot a little bit at 6:30. We're on track. So one of the important things I want to note is there are some majors where you have to apply directly into that major or school, and admissions in that major or school may be much more selective than for the university overall. And so when you look at, I've talked about selectivity in admissions, this is one of the nuances for those of you who are considering more certain majors. It's important to be aware of that as you plan your strategy for applying to these schools. You must be mindful of this. Many majors that are highly selective, more so than the main college, are things like engineering, nursing, and business. So for example, at the University of Massachusetts, their business school is much more difficult to get into than the University of Massachusetts as a College of Arts and Sciences applicant. So it's very important, if you're interested in these, to ask, are these direct admit programs, is the way that you ask the question. So schools of nursing, schools of business, schools of engineering, or colleges of engineering, you may have to apply directly to those colleges and go through a unique process. Performing arts is often that way as well. If you're a musical theater person, applying to conservatories, those can be significantly more selective and require very unique processes to go through to get admitted. So I don't have time to go into all of that stuff today, but be mindful that you may have a unique set of processes you need to go through. So on that note, how to determine if you're ready for college. And okay, we're doing okay in the chat. All right. So one of the assignments I gave you as an extension activity, for those of you who may have decided to do that, is I sent you to complete the college readiness checklist that is in our College Readiness Resource Center over at Perkins. The College Readiness Checklist is something we created a few years ago to help give students, their families, and educators something concrete to think about. What are the skills I need once I graduate from high school to kind of start doing some of these college things? And college has become very technology oriented in terms of just negotiating day to day, signing up for classes, engaging with the learning management system. And it requires a lot of detail management, a lot of logistical management. And those are things that sometimes we don't really connect with college readiness, but I'm here to tell you these are really important. So for those of you who have not completed the college readiness checklist, the way I decided I was going to approach this today was to remind you of some of the categories of skills that need to be somewhat robust. And I'm going to explain why that is in our next section. So the college readiness checklist looks at several areas, such as self-advocacy and self-determination. How well do you speak up when you need help? How soon do you recognize that you need help? Do you try and problem solve independently for an appropriate amount of time before you start asking for help? These are key skills as you emerge out of high school, which is a fairly supportive environment, and sometimes very supportive environment, to college, where it's on you to make things work. I could go on and on about that, but I'm going to move on to technology skills. The college readiness checklist raises concerns and questions about how fast are you typing? How fast are you able to access information, both from a access to find out what my assignments are on a web-based learning management system, to how effective and efficient are you at creating and editing written documents that are of significant length? How effective are you at researching and utilizing online databases, online articles, online search mechanisms? These require layers and layers of skills and experience that we know need to be explicitly taught, particularly for students who are screen readers. And we know that in some cases we need to have a yes and approach with technology, so that you may be a brilliant Braille note user, but you also want to add in some other access tools so that you can access a broad range of documents, websites, activities that you may need to do in a variety of settings. And that takes time to build, to get trained in, and to become real technology natives, as we describe it. So no one else is going to do that work for you in college. Another area to consider is orientation and mobility. Especially coming out of the pandemic, we know that some students have had less exposure to the sequence of skill building that you need to gain independence, to go navigate a college campus on your own. You won't get orientation and mobility instruction in college, so high school is definitely the time to make sure your skills are growing and increasing as appropriate in your independence and your problem solving, your use of tools, and so on. So I could go on and on about all of these, but it may be something to talk about with your O&M instructor, with your parents, and to explore how to gain additional independence, how to create opportunities, even within your family structure, to go to the grocery store and begin to gain independence in that environment, and set some goals to help increase your ability to do things on your own. Academic skills, this is everything from some of the technology skills I talked about earlier. What are your typing skills? What is your skill in writing and formatting a paper and getting it ready for someone to do a visual check to make sure it's aligned properly, and some of the things that perhaps a peer tutor or someone in a writing center could then do a final check on. What are your skills in terms of reading rate and reading level? Are you able to read 75 to 100 pages of academic material a week in a variety of formats? Take notes on that material and be able to then integrate that into an assessment a month from now. Have you ever had experience doing that quantity of work? If you haven't, those may be things you may need to explore, asking, how can I ramp that up? Again, I could talk for forever about that. Executive functioning skills. Those are skills you may know about, you may not know what the heck I'm talking about. These are skills that help you manage your time effectively, estimate how much time it might take to accomplish a certain task, like it's going to take me about 1 hour to write that paper, or it's going to take me about a half an hour to clean my room. Those kinds of things. It's things like being able to create and organize a paper, to plan a long-term project. Like I have a research paper due in 6 weeks. It's a 10-page paper, and I have to include at least 5 online resources that are academic in nature, not just Wikipedia. And I have to formally cite that. I have to set up a timeline that allows me to get that done in enough time to get support from the Writing Skills Center, have someone proofread it with me, work through research questions that I have, and so on. Those are executive functioning skills too, taking a big project and breaking it down into smaller chunks. Let's see, independent living skills are day-to-day things, everything from clothing management, matching your clothes and having them reflect what you want to have them reflect, to making meals, making sure you're well fed, managing your money, understanding how money ebbs and flows, and a million other things. So those may be things you may want to talk about both with your family and with your TBI, making sure if you take the college readiness checklist, looking at those skills and seeing what you may need to work on. Vocational skills are things like we talked about in choosing a major. What are things I enjoy doing or am good at doing? What are things that maybe I don't like so much? Maybe I really don't like writing. Maybe I really don't like being outside. Maybe I can't be outside because I have terrible allergies, whatever. Being aware of the strengths and challenges you bring into your future job or career, how those match up with areas of study, training that you need, and how those match up with your life goals. Will you be able to earn enough money in those selected careers? Do you have the technology skills to meet the demands of that job? Customer service is a technology-driven job. You need technology in order to do that job effectively. Do you have those skills and the motivation to go learn those skills if you don't have them? That's kind of what vocational skills are. And social emotional skills are everything from what do you know about yourself, your reaction to things and situations around you, your ability to manage and regulate those emotions. It's also being aware of and responding appropriately to those around you, both your friends, unfamiliar people, both peers and adults, and all of the layers related to that. These are probably skills you're working on right now, you're growing into as high school students. It's a big journey that you're on right now as you're learning about all these pieces of yourself. And I encourage you to continue to be aware that these are important things and that there's people around you who want to support you and help you. The fact that you're here in this session today tells me you're motivated to learn about these things and you're motivated to begin working on these things. I encourage you to get feedback from those around you who care about you and know you well, so that you are accurate in your assessment of how strong your skills might be. Because boy, a very normal thing is to say, oh yeah, I'm great at technology. But really, you're great at swiping on your iPhone. And you really may need to bolster the complexity of your technology skills to include keyboarding, laptop use, and so on. Because most folks can't bring an iPad to a lawyer's office and go conduct business from that. iPads also have limited utility and apps that can be downloaded on them. Not all programs and tools work on an iPad. So you really need a range of tools in your toolbox to do all the things that you want to do in life. So that's the college readiness checklist. That's one way of beginning to explore and then plan to make sure that you have the college readiness skills you may need that are related to the independence that's assumed once you get out of high school. A couple of other things to point out here. To your point, Houston, earlier, high school coursework is key. A college prep coursework typically includes 4 years of English, 4 years of math, through pre-calc or statistics. There's a lot of debate in the field right now about what that should look like, but for competitive colleges, they're going to be looking for 4 years through algebra 2 minimally into ideally pre-calc. If you're an engineering aspirant, you should be in calculus or calculus A, B, or BC. 3 years of social studies. The traditional trajectory is a year or two of world civ, US history, and then senior year, there's often electives like psychology, sociology, economics, and so on. 3 years of a lab science, biology, chemistry, and physics, and then 2 years of a world language. That is a classic college prep series of courses. Most high schools have different levels of courses. So college prep, then honors, then AP courses. When your transcript is sent to a college, that transcript will list out by year, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. It will list out all the courses that you're taking and the grades that you've got typically at the end of the year. Some transcripts list semester grades as well. Every transcript's different. It will often list your absences as well. And folks who read college or high school transcripts are looking for, does a person have 65 absences in a year? That would, be a question they may ask if you have a chance to interview. It may be a concern that they have. There may be a very good reason why you were out for that many days. The other thing that they will look at is the level of courses that you took at your high school, given what was available. And they're looking for the most rigorous coursework possible for selective colleges. For your local community college, they're an arms wide open, come on in kind of place. They want to see that you have the academic skills or the potential to be successful in their curriculum. But they're not looking at the rigor of your courses and your GPA and all of that. They really are there to help move a wide range of folks into post-secondary training and degree-seeking pursuits. So, but for selective colleges, this is a standard thing to look at. And what I want to note on this, at the bottom of this slide, I have several things written. I'm going to read them all out loud and briefly discuss them with you. I want you to be aware of modifications in your assignments, making sure that, because in college, your assignments will never be modified. Whatever is assigned, you must do in order to pass the course. But in some cases, students have modifications of assignments, such as reduced question sets in math, or students may not have to do worksheets for a science class, or a reduced multiple choice options on a test, or reduced questions on a test. None of those are accommodations in a college setting. So if you have any questions about that, I would speak with your parents and your TDI about that. Paraprofessional support is another thing to consider. Often students in high school who are operating and going through their day may have paraprofessional support as part of their IEP to help them manage all sorts of different pieces of their world in high school. We encourage that that be reduced by early junior year, if not late junior year, so that a student has the experience of negotiating the world independently in that familiar high school environment without that adult there almost all the time. In college, there are not paraprofessionals. You're on your own in terms of juggling your coursework, making sure your assignments get done on time. It's your job to do that. And so getting used to doing that more independently is really crucial also for you to figure out, do I like to do this? Do I have the skills to do that? Do I have things that may be getting in the way of me effectively doing that? Do I need to learn more skills? And so on. Another thing I want to raise is grades. Grade inflation is real. And I have seen grades sometimes not necessarily reflect actual achievement in certain classes. And so while you may be getting perhaps straight A's, I would ask the question, is this grades that are exactly the same expectations that are put on typically cited peers on this identical series of assignments that your typically cited peers are taking? It's very important to recognize that grades are simply your high school's way of saying you did whatever their expectation was. Colleges don't know how rigorous or lacking rigor or expectation your school may be. They just see, oh, they got all A's, they must be rock stars. And time again, we see that there aren't related academic skills that are attached to those very strong grades in some cases. So that's a Debbie Downer thing to say. I just encourage you to be informed consumers, really, and students out there, and ask hard questions. So I will move on from that. So here's the key thing that comes after thinking about, am I college ready? And here's the thing that a lot of students don't really have a chance to think about, and that is what changes between high school and college. A lot. And the way that I tend to frame it is, where does that locus of control live? Is it in you? Are you responsible for everything right now in high school? Or are adults making sure stuff is getting done? Often adults are making sure stuff is getting done, that your documents are brailled, that your teachers are giving you extended time. They're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to meet whatever accommodations have been identified through your IEP process. In college, that's you. All those adults go away. Any speech language pathologist, any O&M instructor, any counselor, all that stuff goes away. Your TBI does not go to college with you. And that is often a really rude awakening for students. Sometimes it's super exciting, but it's important to understand that that shift needs to begin to happen now for you all. So we're going to briefly go into a couple of differences between high school and college. And in the resources that I send, you will get links to a couple of articles we have in our College Readiness Resource Center that really unpack this a little more for you as students. And we also have articles written specifically for your educators and your parents that are kind of written to them in their role in your life. And so they're different kinds of articles. But here's a couple of examples. In high school, your district defines and identifies and recognizes your visual disability, and your parents provide the district with documentation on your disability. All that goes away in college. You, as a student, are responsible for disclosing information about your disability and the need for accommodations to the Disability Service Office in order to receive services. No one is looking for you to say, how can we help you? It's up to you to go find the DSO or Disability Service Office and to be able to describe, I have a visual impairment. It is X, Y, and Z. It impacts my learning in PDQ way. And the accommodations I'm requesting are FGH. So it's important that you begin now to practice doing that type of thing and not having adults speak for you. In most cases, not all, DSOs are not going to speak with your parents. You have to do that. And that for some students is a new skill. And it takes time to develop. Another example of a difference between high school and college, and these are just a couple that I picked out to kind of give you some sense of what I'm talking about. We know most of you guys probably have an IEP or individualized education plan, and you have services like your TBI's presence in your life, extended time on tests, getting your documents in an accessible format for you, orientation and mobility services, possibly even a separate van to get to school. Those are all determined by your IEP, and it's all driven by your district and your diagnosed vision loss and or other disability. In college, you, the student, not the parent, initiates any discussion and requests for disability services and accommodations. There's no IEP in college. As one of my former students said, you are your own IEP in college. You're the person clarifying your needs, requesting the accommodations, and then you've got to do with the material that's accommodated so you can read it and access it. You got to do the work. No one else is going to do that work. And that can, in some cases, be a very large shift. I'm going to pause briefly. Houston's commenting. Okay, good to know. Okay. All right. I've got 7 minutes. Now I am going to talk briefly about the role of the DSO office, what it is and what it is not. So, and again, I have an article that I'll send you that I'm pulling out in our resources so that you have that information at your fingertips. What are they? They are there to make sure that you have materials that are in an accessible format. Those are the accommodations they'll provide. They also provide accommodations for you in terms of if you're going to be a residential student living on campus, helping to make sure that that you have housing accommodations that meet your specific needs. Often we recommend that students consider requesting living on a first floor, possibly a single, so that materials that you have in your room or your brailer don't keep everyone awake at night, because we know how loud those are. That maybe your dorm be near the dining hall so that travel to the dining hall may be less complex or time consuming, things like that. Then let's see. And so the DSO is the one that approves those accommodations, and then they're going to have their own unique process for communicating that to the professors. Some colleges, you all agree on the accommodations, they write it up in a letter, they send it to the professor, and you carry on with your classes. In some cases, they say, okay, here's a letter, you need to forward it to the professor, set up a time to meet with the professor, introduce yourself, and describe what's going on. Every college is different, but you can see that is a really different scenario than most of you are operating in high school. Not all of you, but some of you. So the DSO is there to make sure materials and are available in an accessible format, but they are not there to do the work for you, to organize the work, to help you with your writing. That's not what they're there for. So that is a very brief description of it. So the next slide is talking about taking the lead with the Disability Service Office. As you figured out by now, that's on you as students. And so I pulled a couple of bullet points from one of our articles just to give you a sense of things you can begin doing now. Identify the current accommodations you're receiving in high school and which piece of your disability that's related to. That helps you understand the correlation. Extended time is a great example. It just takes longer to read in Braille or to read auditorily and go back and find a piece of material and a piece of writing, or review multiple choice questions repeatedly and so on. So start making a list of the accommodations you're getting now. Understand what those are and how they're helping you access your learning. Know your needs. Start thinking about the types of accommodations that you may need in a college setting, given your goals of attending as a day student, attending part-time, attending as a residential student, and so on. Common examples of accommodations include things like electronic copies of materials or Braille materials, a note taker for classes, particularly if they're highly visual classes, or you may have hearing loss as well as vision loss. A note taker can be good, but then you got to know what to do with those notes. Getting lecture PowerPoints ahead of time so you can preview them and be aware of what's coming down in a particular class. If you are able to review the PowerPoints visually, you may be able to have time to get prepared and understand what images may be on the PowerPoint prior. So all of these can serve to increase your academic achievement and depth of understanding of what's, college is about complicated ideas. Be sure to think about other disabilities you might also bring to the equation, things like autism, learning differences like ADHD, dyslexia, executive functioning challenges, mobility challenges, health issues such as chronic health issues, things like celiac disease, a million other things, mental health diagnoses, are all things that can be explored in a disability service office. And possibly have accommodations related to that. So I encourage you to think broadly. They're there to support you so that you can access your learning in the college environment, but they can't help you if they don't know. Finally, review your IEP or 504 plan, or your ACT or SAT accommodations letter. All of those can give you additional insights. And make a set of questions. In this PowerPoint, this is linked to a set of questions in one of our articles to help you begin to explore that. And then make a point as you're visiting college campuses to have time to visit DSOs. Other resources, just so you know, on campus that can help you in your academic development, Writing Center, a Math Center. Often there are peer tutors. And professors. Get to know your professors, but you are responsible to do the work, to organize it, to manage your deadlines, and so on. No one else is going to do that or remind you to do it. Finally, to disclose or not disclose. This is a very personal decision. And there are pros and cons to both. It's something that I would encourage you to work specifically with your TBI, your family, your guidance counselor at your high school, and to explore the pros and cons. Certainly going and talking to a disability service office is disclosing that you have a visual impairment or other secondary diagnosis that you want to work on and to learn about. The DSO does not talk to the admissions office, just so you understand. So you can choose to not disclose in the admissions process and still chat with the DSO. You can ask your guidance counselor in a letter of recommendation to disclose for you, or you can choose to write a second essay if you're applying to selective colleges or using the Common App, and use your second essay to disclose. Every situation is different, but these are things to begin to think about in this particular situation. So with that, I think I actually got through my whole agenda. Y'all were great. I hope you're not bored because I didn't get a lot of questions in the chat. But that was cleaning up a lot of details about college prep and a lot of layers to think about and to begin to ask questions about your school. It's 7 o'clock and Leslie's not yelling at me, so I'm super psyched.
No, that was fabulous. Thank you. I just wanted to tell the captioner, thank you. You can close out. Isabel, I saw you had your hand up for a while and then it went down, so I didn't know if you wanted to try again. Yeah, go ahead. We cannot hear you, Isabel. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you so much, Leslie. That was fabulous. I minored in German for the person who was interested in language. It was tough. I had to continually go back to my disability services office because it was going really fast. It wasn't like language in high school. You just have to keep trying and problem solving, but you can do it.
That's great insight, Leslie. Thank you. Good. Well, thank you all. And the final slide does have my email address on it. Always feel free to reach out. We're here to help support you. I talk to students every day with all sorts of different kinds of questions. So we're happy to support you.